Joan Quinn, a member of the California Arts Council and Beverly Hills Arts Commission, is the former West Coast editor of Andy Warhol's Interview magazine and society editor of the Herald Examiner. Her cover stories can be read in Venice and Detour magazines, and she is a contributing editor to California Apparel News. For the next half hour, Joan will bring you inside news and views on society, art, film, and the exhilarating worlds of these multifaceted people. Here is Joan Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn. Welcome. We're talking to Kenneth W. Rendell. For more than 30 years, Kenneth has been reading other people's mail. Mr. Rendell is a collector and dealer in historical letters and documents. Kenneth, which came first, your collecting or your business?
Well, the collecting came first. I don't think you could ever set out to go into a business like this, because in a sense it's almost not a real business. And the collecting passion definitely came first. And then I bought too many things. And in order to pay off everything, in 1959 I decided to start selling some of them.
You actually started collecting letters just on your own, out of your own interest?
Well, I traded a collection of English coins to a friend of mine who had been collecting letters of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln.
Oh, because as a young boy, I think you started going through your father's change and pulling out.
Yeah. I used to go through the gumball machines, and in those days, in the 1950s, very few people were interested in coins, and you could actually find coins in circulation that were worth money. And so as I worked in my father's drugstore, and there were no clients in the store, no customers in the store, I'd spend the time going through the change.
So that was a really good move, and then that moved into collecting from your friend, trading your friend, and then
I was overwhelmed with a fascination about people's lives, and I think the most interesting part of being alive is human nature. It's the endless subject.
But you talk about that, and you say fascinated by people's lives, but a lot of these letters are written in different languages. Do you speak different languages?
French and German.
Oh, you do?
But they all are translated, and I don't do the translations because I'm not a scholar capable of doing them well enough. But you really can see the sense. In a lot of the things, you see the emotion, even if you can't read the words. When you look at a Beethoven manuscript that's been corrected, and he corrected everything, he had tremendous power, and he slashes the pen this way and that way.
Oh.
And you can see the mad genius there, and you don't have to know what he said.
I see.
And with a lot of these people, you get a real sense of feeling. I cataloged the other day a Puccini letter, which is written to his mistress, and he wrote music interspersed with the words, so that he wrote the letter and set it to music, and it's a love letter. And visually, it's fantastic.
So in a way, I think you're answering some of the questions I had about how people collect and what they collect. I guess some people collect just letters from musicians.
Yeah, people tend to, it's interesting because a lot of the people who collect letters of musicians are important composers of today. People like Joan Sutherland has been a major collector in this field. A lot of people who are the writers, particularly in this town, collect literature. But except for that, people collect in very eclectic ways. And we always tell people to collect whatever they feel like doing, whatever the personalities are in history that interest them, and turn them on, and that they don't need a pattern. It's their choice to make it up the way they want to.
But this is a letter by up on top.
This letter is by Richard Wagner. And this
back to music again. I thought we would get into the back to the music again.
But it really is human nature. It's a long letter written to his mother saying, I haven't been in touch with you all this time, and I've just hoped that you would stay alive long enough that I could write this letter to you and tell you that I am now a success.
Oh, isn't that wonderful?
And he goes on about all the fears that he's had, and his first opera has just been performed the night before, and finally his mother can be proud of him. Because he always had this feeling that his mother felt he was wasting his time on music. And now all the reviews have come out, and he's sending the reviews, and it is the ultimate letter written by a son.
Where does this letter start, and where does it end up with his mother? Where did it start? Where did he write it?
He wrote it from Dresden, where the opera was being performed. And I'm not sure exactly, without looking at it, where his mother was.
When I was talking to you the other day in your shop in Beverly Hills, you said your dining room is filled with musical letters.
Yes.
Is that
The whole room is filled with musical letters.
Now, what happens if someone like Joan Sutherland or Luciano Pavarotti or Domingo wants one of those things, and it's on your wall.
They're not for sale. Whatever goes home stays at home, or my wife would kill me.
What about the living room at your house?
The living room has other things like George Sand drawings, but there are no actual letters in the living room.
Oh, is
but
that
the
right?
library is full of letters.
And in one category?
Somewhat. The library is full of letters relating to World War II. Winston Churchill, a lot of the leaders of World War II, which interest me. And my wife makes a very big point that our bedroom is full of French mistresses, Marie Antoinette and Pompadour and Dubarry, and letters of the French kings written to their mistresses. So there are themes throughout the house.
That's what I wondered, if people actually did collect in themes, or do collect in themes.
People collect in themes without realizing it. There's a prominent person in this town who once said to me, I have no idea what I'm doing. I buy so eclectically, it's crazy. None of this makes sense. And I said, if you have time for a 2-hour lunch, and we'll answer a lot of questions I'll ask you, I'll pick up the thread. And the thread was very obvious right from the beginning. She collected women who did things against type. She was interested in Florence Nightingale, Eva Peron. She wasn't interested in Elizabeth Barrett Browning. She wasn't interested in Emily Dickinson. She was interested in women who were pioneers, and she is a pioneer in what she's doing. And so she identified with these women, and it was just immediately apparent. She liked Eleanor Roosevelt, Dolly Madison, the women who made it on their own.
And artists, we have a letter from Monet that you brought.
Yes, this is another, in a sense, a really nice love letter written to his wife while he was painting the cathedral. And he talks about all of the daily problems and the changes with the weather and how the light is driving him crazy, which is how everybody benefited. There's so many paintings of the Rouen Cathedral because the light changed so often.
Exactly.
So this letter it's his problem that day, but the whole world of art benefited in the long run by having so many variations on color.
You know, you're involved in so many different things. In different aspects of life. I don't think you could have studied all of these subjects in school.
Oh, you can't.
I mean,
you learn them.
Listening to you, and I'm thinking, what could he have taken in school that would have helped him?
Business, because business I really wasn't interested in. These subjects I love, and the things you love you read on your own and you do on your own, and you pick up that way. So in school I did things that were quite different. But it's a matter of it. I've done this over many, many years. I've been at this 33 years now. And at the beginning, I just did American presidents and then American Revolution. I didn't touch the Civil War until I really learned all about the Civil War. So it's been a whole series of new subjects that I've gone into.
We know that people are interested in certain things, because you've told us about that. You have galleries in Boston, Los Angeles, and
New York.
New York. Do people in Boston, New York, and LA differ in their collecting habits?
Very definitely. And Boston is very academic, very scholarly only. And it's a small city. It's a relatively small town. New York is very international. We sell a lot of material related to South America because there are South Americans who live partly in New York and partly in South America. New York is a mix of everything. Beverly Hills surprises people when I tell them how well literature sells. The many, many people making their living in this area write movies, write scripts.
Right.
They're involved in literature. Irving Wallace, who died a few years ago, was a major collector of literature, one of the major producers.
People who write literature, authors is what we're talking about,
authors,
not just collecting manuscripts.
Right. Correct, but the authors of today are usually or very frequently interested in the letters of authors from the past.
What
and
about
the same
Texas?
with music.
What about Texas?
Are the people in Texas interested in Texas?
Just wondering.
To a fair degree. Yeah, Texas is almost like a separate subject. It's almost like a nationality.
Really?
Yeah, and there is a real allegiance within Texas for people to collect Texas material.
Oh, you do? You are saying they collect just Texas material.
I mean, it's almost like a foreign country. In the sense they don't have any interest in American presidents, they're only interested in the presidents of Texas. And Sam Houston and Stephen Austin.
Right.
Of all the states that you would pick, Texas is the one state where the people living in it collect material relating to its history, excluding everything else.
Isn't that something? Yeah. And Asia, when I was in, you had a framed Hirohito.
Yeah. Japan, we have a boutique and we do exhibitions every month in Japan. And Japanese collectors are very interested in French literature, which is amazing, German music, German philosophy, economists of all types. Douglas MacArthur is the most popular hero there is in Japan because most successful Japanese today had a chance at success because MacArthur gave them a constitution very much like the American Constitution. And they've had a shot at it. They've had a chance. And under the old system, they had no chance.
Tell me, what was your greatest find?
The most spectacular was finding Admiral Byrd's diaries from the South Pole, which everyone thought had been long lost. And it was spectacular because I found them in Glad trash bags.
I was going to ask you about trash.
Yeah, it was in the trash, literally. And I was going through all this junk, thinking this is a real waste of time. And I was 6 or 7 bags into this, pouring it out on a basement floor when I found all of these diaries. And they were sold for $165,000.
I want to come back to the diaries, but on the wall in Beverly Hills, there's a picture of Elvis Presley and something crinkled up from the Hilton Hotel, and I said, it looks like it was thrown away.
Exactly.
And you said that's where?
Exactly. The husband's maid, who used to do his suite in Las Vegas, used to pick the notes out of the wastebasket.
And that's what you have?
Yeah, and it's a very tragic note. About saying that I'm so sick of Elvis Presley, I cannot go on any longer. I need some rest. The people won't let up. I know they're all here just for the money. I can't stand being Elvis Presley any longer.
So you just straighten that note out that was crinkled up and frame it.
We didn't try too hard to straighten it because the part of the story I think really is he didn't write that for anybody to see. He wrote it for him to express it. And then he threw it away, and he didn't write it to give to anybody.
I see. And going back to Admiral Byrd's diaries, we found Hitler's diaries not long ago.
Yes.
And you had a big part in discovering that they were actually forgeries.
Yeah, they fell into the whole human nature thing as far as I was concerned. I got involved in this for Newsweek. I expected a big scientific challenge. Using ultraviolet lamps to check the age of the paper and handwriting and everything, but it really came down to a case of human nature. The forgeries were terrible. They were a joke when I saw them.
How could you tell they were a joke without using all that?
It didn't even look like his handwriting.
Oh.
It wasn't even remotely like it. And Hitler's handwriting, the size and clarity of the handwriting followed the progress of the war. 1930s, he had a big signature about that big, and he was on top of the world. And as soon as things started to go badly in 1942, his signature got smaller and smaller, and finally his signature is about 1/4 of an inch in 1945. The forger went the wrong way. The forger in the 1930s had the small signature, and he kept getting bigger and bigger as the war went on.
But that's what you would think in your mind. As somebody grows older, they make things bigger. But the way you looked at it was just pretty simple, wasn't it? And the opposite.
But I also had the knowledge of a lot of Hitler material, and I knew exactly what he did. And I knew what his wedding certificate looked like, which has 1/4 of an inch signature from the bunker on his last day. But there were other things, too. That when people look at their own handwriting, the capital letters in their signature almost certainly will not match the capital letter when written out in the text. People use a stylized form in their signature. The forger didn't realize that. So every time he wrote an H in the text of the Hitler diary, he made this very stylized H that he had used in the signature.
For his signature.
And you see, Thomas Jefferson's another one with a J in Jefferson. Doesn't look anything like a J if he wrote the word Jackson, for example, or J.
That's really interesting.
So there are a lot of tricks like this.
But that's how you can tell forgeries, besides the ultraviolet lights and the aging. And
you almost never have to really get to that. You know, there are things that they're dead wrong just to start with. There were a group of movie star photos that came out 4 or 5 years ago in Los Angeles, and it was a great story. It was an archive. It came from some guy's papers who had worked on the set of Gone with the Wind. He had these wonderful stills that were signed by Clark Gable, by Vivian Leigh, except that he had made the mistake most forgers make. When he wrote on the photograph, he put the pen on the paper, he wrote the name, and he picked it up. People don't write that way. People come along quickly. They just put the pen right down, and they take it off. So you have a very fine line at the beginning that broadens out, and at the end you have a broad line that goes out to a fine point.
It stays on the paper. It doesn't finish and then lift up.
That's right. And forgers consistently put the pen down on the paper, write, finish, and pick it up.
That's great.
So there are a lot of small things before you ever get to it.
I think the way you frame everything is so wonderful. How do you choose a photograph to go with the letter?
I try to pick photographs that I think really represent the person.
Does it have to be from the period of the letter?
No. That's my decision not to do that. Nobody recognizes Picasso with hair.
Oh, right.
I mean, it may be an early letter, but my reaction when I saw one that we had framed in New York was, who in the world is this? You just don't recognize these people totally out of context. So people have an image of Picasso. We wouldn't put a really young Monet here with this letter, even though this letter is written kind of at middle age. This is the much more well-known and familiar. And I also want photographs that are expressive and to some degree have a feeling of the person.
You talked about movie stars, and we've talked about Monet. We've talked about everyone who is no longer in the world with us, basically. Do you only have letters from people who are gone?
Yes. Yes, it's almost a rule we almost never violate. There are a few exceptions. We declared Greta Garbo, for all intents and purposes, dead about 5 years ago before she died because she never signed anything and nobody ever saw her. And we make an exception with presidents. We've made an exception with Gorbachev because someone provided me with a videotape of Gorbachev signing the pieces that the fellow was offering us. So I knew that those were genuine. But otherwise, we don't deal in living people, in part because it takes time to settle out reputations. And also, you don't know what's genuine these days. And when it comes to movie stars, anything produced by the studio is not genuine.
Because someone else just signs all the letters,
they can't possibly do
fan mail and the pictures.
We don't sell astronauts for the same reason. The astronauts have machines that sign all this stuff for them. They're busy. They can't produce 500 signed photos a day. And maybe, some of them are genuine, but you can't really sort them out with any certainty. And so we just don't get into that.
And as you said before we went on the air, your signature that you signed on the release is worth a fortune. And
on the right documents.
And we're going to thank Kenneth Rendell for being with us today. Thanks, Kenneth.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and I'm talking to artist Salvador Maron. Salvador was sent to visit me in Beverly Hills by our good friend in Paris, Khazar Khan. The Khan family has been collecting Maron's realist paintings for years. Salvador has shown his work in galleries throughout Europe and all over, I guess, Salvador, is that right? Not just Europe.
Yeah, well, all over, almost, yeah. In Australia, even Japan and the United States. I guess that's more or less what there is there.
That's the world.
Yeah.
South America as well.
South America, sure.
How did you develop such a keen eye for the realism? I mean, this looks like a rug hanging here in front of us.
I try very hard, but I had my own, probably my own system. I don't know. I have a system which, of course, scares a little bit people when they see me painting because I move my eyes very fast, I go from the subject to the painting, just like very fast, like that. Look.
And then you're painting at the same time? Did you come from a family of artists?
Well, if you consider the family of painters that Spanish, like Velázquez, Zurbarán, yeah, they are my family.
That's a pretty good family.
Yeah, sure, but of course. Originally, I'm from working class family, and nobody in my family was an artist, not that I know.
But you were influenced by the great Spanish painters.
Yes, there is some, in the genes, some blood somewhere.
Have you had any formal training? Did you go to school, art school in Europe?
No, absolutely never. Well, I went to few times to academies like that to try a little bit, but I never really thought that I could learn anything important that, they would just teach you, a lot of, technical tricks, but I never use these tricks because I'm too spontaneous paintings and I like to do how it comes from me and, I have my own training, my own school. I started very young, you know.
Your own. It's your own school and your own
Yeah.
training. I see.
Yeah.
What you usually
But I must say that there are people in my life who has teach me a lot, you know, and I owe them a lot in that sense. But they are not teachers in any school. There's a school of life.
I see. Well, when you decide, I know you did a whole series of rooms, and then you did a series of rugs, and you did different series. How do you decide what subject matter?
Yeah, well, I always, look for subjects that are not very exploited, of course, because, everybody paints, still lifes, apples, oranges, etc., vegetables, rabbits, and, So carpets, is in the floor, and it has this strange perspective. You never look at them. You always walking on them, you ignore them, but they are beautiful things. They are works of art, and that, I think deserved some sort of consideration and somebody to look at it more closely and to show that what they're stepping on is, sometimes a work of art. Yeah.
But that's what happened when you decided to.
So they can step on that.
That's right. But that's when you did carpets. But you also did a series of rooms that are just charming. That's what I like to do, things that I see, places that I go, people that I know. So is the locations where you live have inspired your work, or does that matter?
Absolutely, yeah. There are some places where I feel more comfortable painting and more inspired and yeah.
Where have you lived? I know you've lived everywhere.
I live everywhere, more or less. Yeah, I left my home when I was 16, and since then I was a traveler. So India included. All these places. I've been in the road to anybody of my age. Involved in my generation. I think all these things everybody knows. Hi, everybody.
What about color? Does color influence you?
Colors, well, I suppose so, but it's the last thing I think about it, First is the forms, the lines, and the proportions, and the colors, it's like the decoration,
Is
it's
that
more,
right?
Yeah. It's more, it's a not, well, I wouldn't say it's not important, please, understand me. It's just that technically the color is important, but in my work it's more important the drawing.
And talking about that medium, the drawing, but you draw, you paint, what kind of tools do you use?
I use basically, a very classical media, palette, easel, oil tubes, brushes, and my hands. That's all. And, I should say also my...
You sit? But do you use chalk? I've seen some of your work.
I used chalks, inks, all these watercolors, but basically oil is the more interesting for me.
Behind you is a painting of your wife.
Oh, sorry.
Willie Van Ruy.
Oh, hi.
And is that in oil?
Yeah.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
It just looks so loose and so easy.
Yeah. Actually, this is a sort of, I did it one night that I didn't have any material with me, no brushes, no paint, no nothing. So that's all I could find was a tube of acrylic and a pot of gold paint. So it's actually, and black. So it's just the three things, and
Did you paint it from your memory, or was she sitting for you?
No. I know her already that I could do that, but I never paint from memory. It's one thing that I'm against.
Really? You like someone to sit for you? Willie Van Ruy is a very famous model and great shoe designer, and she designed your boots, I think, and my shoes. But you have another interesting story besides our shoes and your boots and Willie. Where did this appear? I think you have a funny story about this painting.
Oh yeah, this painting has been already in television in a Ford commercial with Lindsay Wagner. So I saw it many times already, so I thought, you know, some people may recognize it.
It's the perfect thing for our show. When you're painting, do you have a message for the world, or do you just paint for yourself?
No, I guess there is a message, you know, but I wouldn't really, I think it's maybe pretentious, you know, to say it's a message. Art itself, you know, is already important message. It's not me to say that. Everybody agrees in that, so if I'm going to say more than what everybody knows, I would look like, I don't know, you know, I don't have really nothing to say, you know. I paint, that's all really, you know.
When you're not painting, do you have any other creative ventures? Do you do anything else other than paint?
Yeah, I get sometimes, if I'm lucky, I get a massage.
Oh, no. From Nancy?
Oh, I get crazy, you know, when I don't paint.
That's your outlet?
Yeah.
So you can't give us
So, can I ask you a question?
some little insight into Salvador about what you're doing when you're not painting?
When I'm not painting? Well, you know, I read, I help to Willie, you know, whatever she has to do. She doesn't drive, you know, I drive her, or, you know.
When she had the boutique in Spain, did you design it?
No, she designed it, but I did it. I worked on I made it.
You made it happen.
But it was her design. Mm-hmm.
If you weren't a painter, what do you think you would be doing now?
Maybe I would be a pilot.
You sound like Khazar Khan. The inventions and the dreams of the world.
Yeah, having ideas, yeah, probably. Could be, I even could design maybe clothes, you know.
So, before we leave, tell our audience if you had any place to live in the world, where you would choose.
I'm going to be very direct and frank with you. I'll be here, right here, where I'm now, in Los Angeles.
It's the best place?
Yeah.
And why is it so great?
Why is it great? Well, you know, you tell me that.
I know, I love it too, and I don't think I'd go anywhere else. We're happy that you were with us and you got an insight into Salvador Maron, and thank you for being with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
One of my close friends.
It's an honor.
Thanks.